Hello and welcome to today's podcast. Today we have a special guest, Vila Loukas. She's joining all the way from Denver, Colorado. She's a healer, teacher, and a guide in a modern mystery school. And also, she's a certified secured embody professional. Wow. So I'm curious. Sure.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. It's so great to be here with you, Kasia.
Oh, so lovely to have you. So what does it mean, secured embody practitioner?
Yeah. So in the world of our work, so of course, you and I are both guides and, practitioners in the Modern Mystery School. We're working with really helping people have more light, right? And light from the spiritual perspective. And that's great. And it doesn't really do us a lot of good if if we're not actually in our bodies, right? Because here's the thing, we're very expansive spiritual beings. We've got a lot of different facets to us, and we have a lot of capacity in the mental realms. So it's easy for us to kind of, in that mind level, exist outside of our actual bodies. And for a lot of people, being in their bodies is a very scary and threatening and challenging experience. And so the process of working on becoming securely embodied means your relationship to yourself, to your physicality, your emotional self, your mental self, and then ultimately your spiritual self is feels safe. It feels like a safe place to be. I feel secure in myself such that I can be in my body and be fully present. So that's how I would sum it up.
That's amazing. I think it's so important, that the feeling of safety, I think that comes up so many times throughout my life in conversation with my clients. When we're going through this journey of healing, we often seek that safety from within. And I love that taking care of the safety, being safe in our body, because I think sometimes by not having a great relationship with ourselves, we might not taking care well of our physical body or our
Right.
to our emotion. And I think where there's this maybe sometimes lack of care or lack of love or lack of awareness, or maybe there are other influences, it brings this lack of safety, and that's not a great place to be in.
Absolutely. And so, it, I started out my work in the healing arts as a body worker. I started in the world of massage and body work, and what I found almost immediately is that we carry things at a physical level that then impact everything else. So the patterns that exist. A lot of people think about, oh, my thought patterns or my behavior patterns at an emotional level. Well, all of those are going to have some rooting in the physical body. And so if we don't also address the physical side of it, then those patterns are going to just keep finding a way back in. So regardless of how much emotional healing we go through, or mental reprogramming or affirmations, if something's rooted in the physical, we have to address it there as well, which again is where so many of our mystery school modalities are really powerful, because they will address all the levels all at once. But it's really important that we also have that awareness that the physicality is just as important, or maybe even in some ways more important than some of those other levels, because it is where that density exists, right? It's literally at the physical, at that densest level of energy that exists.
Mm.
And so, another way we could talk about this is from the perspective of trauma. And that trauma gets rooted in the physical, and that's really what trauma is. Everything I just described is one way of just explaining the phenomena of trauma.
Mm. And I feel like, the whole journey of self-healing and receiving the healing session, receiving the initiation, healing on all those levels before they actually root into our body, it is to have a joyous life. It
Yeah,
is to feel safe, to be ourselves, to express, to live our greatest potential. So so this work is so important because we meant to be having fun here. We meant to experience life of joy and connections, and it's important that we take care of ourselves on all those different level and allow the physicality to be fun time, not this.
absolutely. And, and so that's where also it's so important not to fall into that habit or that, kind of default of avoiding, right? Avoiding what's not pleasant, so it's like, okay, yes, we want to move towards how we find joy and where we find happiness and the things that we like and all that. Yes, all of that is true. And that self care is important from that perspective. But that self care also requires that we are addressing the places that aren't healthy, right? And I often use a lot of gardening metaphors, right? So if a plant that's growing in the ground isn't thriving, then there's something wrong, right? And so we have to not just you know give more of what we think it needs, right? We need to actually attend to where the problem point is, where the issue is. And so it might be in the soil, so we think, oh, it just needs more light and water, and you just put it in a sunnier spot, but really it's the soil that's the problem. More light from the outside, it really isn't going to help. It's just going to, potentially actually do more damage because the actual issue exists somewhere else that might be harder to see. And so I think that's an important thing to remember in that journey of self-healing that you were just describing.
And I can connect to this, when I began my journey, and sometimes with healing sessions, and when the light shines, um, the healing sometimes can be uncomfortable because we become aware of that what is not serving us, of that where we are sometimes the bigger sabotager of our joys and health. And I think sometimes in on the journey it's easy to push away this discomfort, and it's like, oh no, I just want to feel good, I don't want to look at it. But it's so important, I found it through my own journey and with my clients, that as we go through this deeper knowing ourselves and healing, like in a way, if this is our divine self, there's all those woundings and trauma and illusions and unhealthy patterns. So when the light shine into it, they become more visible, but we have to really spend time with it. And I figure out, like, for me what works is to really be in loving kindness with myself. When the discomfort comes, is, can I sit in love with that what is, without the need to change, but to witness, to understand, to hold, to love, and for that discomfort to almost melt and open so I can see it for what it truly is.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah. And that's, I mean, you actually just described right there what the experience of being securely embodied is. It's having that relationship with the self where I can be with me. I can flow love and compassion to myself instead of always wanting to run or always wanting to hide or wanting to disassociate, right? Wanting to be like, I'm so, disgusted with myself that I want to run away. And those are all those inner relationships, those inner aspects of our relationship to self. So yeah, you said it very eloquently.
beautiful. I even didn't know, so I'm learning something new. Amazing. I feel sometimes, we can even use spirituality as a bypassing, you know, when the discomfort comes and it's like, oh, it meant to be, it shall pass, and we're not taking actually action, um, or care towards really getting to know ourselves, really loving ourselves. Because in a way, self-love is so important uh,
Yeah.
during this journey of loving all parts of ourselves, being able to
Well,
all.
yes. And I love that you brought up that spiritual bypassing piece, because I think it has become very common. And a lot of times people don't even realize that's what they're doing, right? And they think like, oh no, I'm being productive towards something positive. And it's a scales, right? You have to find that sweet spot in the middle. It's like that Vesica Pisces, right? Where like we don't want to overemphasize the negative side of it and be like, woe is me and everything sucks and blah. That's not going to get you anywhere. But then being on the other side where you're only like love and light and there's no such thing as dark or challenges or problems, I mean, that's not reality. That's living in a fantasy land. So where is that crossover point where those two circles, you know, make that sweet spot of where we can actually create change and shift in our lives and for ourselves. And the thing that I think really impacts that spiritual bypassing is our wanting to avoid shame. And it's such a big thing for humans. And shame is, I could go on and on about this topic because it's one I feel very strongly about, but it's kind of the thing we avoid most and even avoid talking about. Even as soon as you mention the word shame, it's like, whoa, like people just like, okay, can we just change the topic? Can we go somewhere else? Like, I don't want to talk about this. It's not pleasant. And that's exactly the point, right? Is when something already holds that level of unpleasantness for us, we're going to have very little motivation to want to move towards it. So it's going to be a lot more interesting to find ways to avoid it, to find those spiritual bypassing, to find whatever it is, right? To find the distractions, to find the self-medication, because any of that is going to be better than sitting in that experience of the shame.
Mhm. I watched recently, I think it was on Instagram, like little reel, and I really liked it, this metaphor of buffaloes. Animals know when the storm is coming, and most
Mm.
animals always run away from the storm. But buffaloes, they run towards to it because they know that if they run towards to it, they will go through the darkness and the chaos much quicker and they will arrive on the other side.
Wow.
I start applying that, in my life. It's like, okay, if the discomfort comes, can I witness it? Can I hold it? Can I be with it? And it's true that it we are able to move through it much quicker. And I like really this, the shame, what you saying. I feel like if we are able to witness the parts of ourselves we are ashamed, then external world will not have such a hook. So a wise man once shared with me, this great question to ask myself every day: what am I good at and what I'm not so good at, what I'm not great at. And just to have this balanced outlook to really see, like, oh, okay, I'm not great at it, I'm sex at it, but I'm great at that. And that, I think, creates this balance. We are able to start looking at ourselves um, in more holistic way. Like, yes, I'm not great, yes, there are things I can be ashamed of, maybe I feel guilty of, or maybe I feel upset, but there's all those things that, oh, they bring me joy and I'm so grateful and I so appreciate. And then suddenly, by knowing all those parts, if someone points out the weakness within us, it's like, yeah, I know I'm not
Yeah,
perfect.
absolutely. And in some of the work that I do with the becoming securely embodied and the self-presence training, I really emphasize that with people, which is that we need to get better at data collection. We're just collecting data. We're just observing and saying, oh yeah, okay, here's an area of strength, here's an area of weakness. It's data. I want to make the areas that are weak stronger. Great. So I'm gonna go shore those up. I'm gonna go get what I need and do what I need to do to like make myself more solid in the spots that have been weak. And great. And then the places that I'm strong, I can lean into those when it's time to you know, do this, that, or the other, I know like, oh, great, I'm already strong here. I can use those. That's just data. And we tend to turn it into something else. We tend to turn it in, we weaponize it. Honestly, that's kind of the way, you know, the most, I would say accurate way of speaking to it is we then turn it back against ourselves. We use that self-judgment, that self-criticism to then really be hard on ourselves. And it almost really is, you know, an addictive cycle. And you know, you and I've had many conversations about this kind of thing, which, you know, so many places we could go in that part of the conversation. But you can sort of have that addiction to that sort of drama cycle or that self aggression cycle where you're just being hard on yourself and there's no other way to do it. And so then when it comes to, you know, the data collection, all you're doing is looking for ways to build up the case against yourself. And that's the kind of place where we really, you know, that relationship to self, you know, becoming securely embodied, we have to work on that piece right there in order to do what you described. Because people who haven't worked on that within themselves aren't able to do what you were speaking to just a few minutes ago, that being loving to yourself and, you know, flowing light to yourself and being kind. They don't know how to do it. They don't think they deserve it. They think that, you know, the only option is to be hard and critical.
Mm. But you know, I have to say, when I started doing it, it was very scary. It was, I had so much resistance. And I felt I'm gonna find even bigger monsters on the other side if I stay with it, if I witness it, if I love it. And the truth it is, or that I will need to do something so big that I'm not capable of to outgrow it and overcome it. And you know, 90% of the time, it's whatever is arising just won't be witnessed. It wants to be happy,
Yes.
to be loved. And then it's like, oh, it's actually not such a big problem, you know, and then the solution comes. And so most of the time it's just, even in just sitting in it, how scary it might be at first, I really would invite, you know, our listeners to try it, because just by sitting and inviting loving eyes and not having any expectation, but just flowing love and just saying to yourself, I'm here. I love
Yeah.
you if you're angry. I love you if you're confused. I love you if you feel ashamed. I love you if you mess it up. I'm here. And just like giving to yourself that what you maybe have not received as a child or maybe as an adult. Because how can we expect to receive something in our relationships if we are not able to give it to ourselves?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love all of what you're saying. And, you know, I think um, when when I work with people in, you know, in this conversation about shame, it really is an experience of separation. And that's why it's so painful, because it's being separated from some part of self, right? And usually what happens is very early in the developmental, you know, process, so very early age, you know, 1 year old, 2 year old, you know, we get some experience of that separation and we don't understand it. So for example, mom or dad getting angry, like you did something and like, you know, mom just freaks out. You know, maybe you accidentally hit her in the face with a, you know, a broom, or, you know, like a stick or something, like you were just having your fun and la 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 la, and whack. And then she freaks out, you know, she's hurt, she's in pain, she's surprised, she's shocked. None of it's real, you know, she's not necessarily mad at, you know, the 1 year old or the 2 year old who whacked her in the face, but she's having an intense reaction. So the child immediately feels like, I no longer have that safe, loving mother who holds me. And therefore I experience a separation. And it's really painful. And it's confusing, because then the child is like, I don't understand what happened. I don't understand, where is this mother that holds me and loves me. And so then the only explanation is that it's me. I did something. There's something wrong with me. I'm the part of the equation that's making this experience of separation be painful. And that's where that shame gets created. There's something wrong with me. And then it perpetuates. So then, in future experiences of separation, which, even in that first example I gave you, it's not, it's not really the child's fault, but it's just the circumstances of living in a physical body, right? There's things like physics. And but that's what starts perpetuating, is that, that conclusion that anytime I feel a separation,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's from a loving caregiver, whether it's from people in my family or myself at any level, or God, then it's something wrong with me. And so come, so exactly what you were speaking to, of that, coming back to holding yourself and being with yourself, that's how we can start to close that gap of separation, and we can bring back that love and care and kindness. Because like you said, in relationships, if we're seeking love and connection with other people, but we're sort of holding that separation within ourselves, we're never going to get to have that actual closeness and intimacy and flow of love with somebody else, if we haven't resolved that experience of separation, that shame that exists within us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I can, I can see how that is then bringing further, like feeling that pot of shame, how we seeking, in a way, proof in our life, in every situation and in every conversation, in every event. It's like, oh, there must be something wrong. I remember a few years back, I had a friend coming to me, and she said like, oh, you don't like me anymore. I'm like, I was quite surprised what she was coming with. And she's like, you look at me differently, like with, I apparently made the face. And it's just interesting how we sometimes make assumptions, just how someone is reacting to us, that maybe they don't like us, they don't love us anymore, they're upset with us. And I feel like as an adult, how important is actually the communication, and to not, so if we are at this stage where we're doing healing, but we still take things personally, that is how important it is to have a courage and with love come to that person that, maybe hurt us, upset us, or maybe we felt pushed away, and ask them actually if they meant that. What was the situation? So we don't feel that part of, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not loved, there must be something wrong with me, more and more with things which are actually not even real.
Yes.
Someone didn't mean, to come across in this way.
Yes, so much true. Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, and and it's one of the places where we just fall into that trap over and over again, right? And we waste so much time, so much energy, so much of our own life force in those kinds of dynamics that, yeah, aren't even necessarily real or true or accurate at any level.
And I'm not saying that, all of them are not real or accurate, but I think often, very good percentage we take things in a negative way where they actually are not. Sometimes, we all get tired, we all get sometimes off day. And, on the off day, maybe we're gonna make a face. Maybe we're not gonna respond to our loved ones in the way we normally do. So, like, also having that knowing and understanding about the self, like, I'm not, my 100% on Monday might not be the same what is 100% on Tuesday or on Wednesday. And it's just like, if I know that this is true for myself, that it must be true for others, that they have sometimes, stresses they're going through, challenges in the life they're trying to face. And then, of course, they're not going to show up in the maybe always the most loving way. And we want to live in the ideal world that we would want that, but we are humans and we do experience challenges and stress. So I feel like a big lesson for me was to not take things personally so much.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, and in the self presence training that I've developed, that I love sharing with people, that's a big piece of it, right? Is spending time with yourself, so that you have more bandwidth as you're going through your day, so that you don't fall into those, those taking it personally traps, right? And I call it emotional care and attention. And it's kind of amazing, because if we take that 10 minutes or that 15 minutes, every morning, and just tend to our emotional self, and just like, what do I need? What am I, um, what is my heart calling for? What are the experiences that are happening for me already? Am I waking up with some level of, I don't know, concern or worry or even dread? It's easy these days in our current, global environment, that, there's a lot going on, and some of it's really scary. And so you might wake up feeling a little bit like, I don't know, there's so much uncertainty in the world, or, maybe something happened the day before that you're still processing, or something came up in the dream time, or, who knows, right? Any number of things. And so when you give yourself the time and space to sort through that a little bit, give it some attention, hold it, witness it, care for it, and that it's important, and not trying to blow it off and be like, none of it matters, we just need to be productive. That's not gonna set us up for the best outcomes throughout our day in our interactions with people.
Mm, mm. I really love in the morning, to do, of course, my rituals, my meditation, but I really love doing this self-love practice when I look in the mirror and I say, I love you and I love you and what can I do for you? And, like literally having a conversation with a self, how can I be of service to you?
Mm.
How can I take care of you? How can I love you more today? And it's always so interesting that just by being present, just by being there, you know, it's it's so often that's what it is needed, you know.
Yes.
Not those massive things. It's not massive, I don't know, I need to go on holiday and rest, or I need to do this. It's just this, I'm here. I love you, we've got,
I,
you know.
I love that question. How can I serve you today? I mean, how often do we ask that of ourselves? That's beautiful, really beautiful.
Mm, yeah. Well, it's so lovely to chat. Would you have any tips for, for someone who is on the healing journey, who maybe have a live activation, who receive Empower Thyself, and of course, with more light, we begin to be aware of those aspects of ourselves which we didn't hold before, or maybe which were rejected before. Like what, apart from using the tools, of course, we want to keep flowing light, but is there a simple tool that they could use daily to help them be present with themselves, to help them, you know, hold themselves more?
I mean, I love that you asked that. Thank you. My favorite is something I call just my sphere of light. And, it's just so, as part of your morning, maybe your morning meditation process, or your morning, whatever, just really bringing some awareness to, the energy around you. And, maybe it's that first, 3 feet of the aura, or 6 feet, or 9 feet of the, however big, doesn't really matter. But really feeling it. And I like to use the feelingful sensation, because oftentimes in some of the rest of our work, we're using a lot of the mind energy. So I like this to be very, you know sensory oriented. And so feeling that sphere of light, like just sort of sitting in a beautiful, like warm bath water, right, where you're just sort of floating, and you can feel yourself held, and you can feel, and if there's any waves, or if there's any, shadows or blockages or whatever, like, then in that sphere of light, you can invite more light in to resolve it, or to help it, dissolve, or if it wants to just be heard, then you can listen. So when you visualize that sphere of light, and you just let yourself feel held in it, it makes it feel more safe for challenge, places of challenge to show up and make themselves known. So instead of those places wanting to hide, and being like, "Ooh, I don't belong in this sphere of light," that it's like, no, every part is welcome because every part is valuable. And so even those challenging spots, even that place where you feel that pain or that shame or that separation, that's valuable because it's a part of you, and there's something there, that has a message for you. And so, okay, great. What is this pain trying to tell me? What is this shame pointing to? And so it gives a way to allow those parts and pieces to kind of gently show up and make themselves known, so you can hear and see and feel them, but in a way that is a little less, um, how do we say, harsh, that feels soft and held and um, supportive.
I love it. It's like holding ourselves and everything that comes with us at the beginning of the day in the light. So
Yeah,
we can start in that beautiful bubble of light, being held and feeling safe. I think that's so important to feel safe as we walk through this life.
yeah. And then of course, as initiates, we have so many tools that can amplify that, right? So then we can, call in our angels and our support, to like help hold that ball of light. Or, I found something challenging and I need a little bit more help with it. I might call in a master of light that can, support me in understanding what this is, or, make sure my higher self is really with me in this sphere, or all of that, right? So they go together very nicely.
Oh my goodness, thank you. That's such a great tip. Vila, it was such a great honor to chat, so much fun, and I hope you can join again. It would be lovely to
Yes,
see the
I would
conversation.
love that. It's always such a joy to talk to you, Cassia. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. Until we hear each other next time, have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yay.